Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
Some local sports roundup here because tonight is kickoff night for the playoffs. I'm just going to go, I've got the brackets up here, and we'll start from Division 1 and just kind of move forward. And Chi High, after their win against Menominee last weekend, they get the 5 seed in Division 1 where they will be taking on Middleton. It's a 5-4 matchup, so, I mean, just based off if they get it right, should be a close game, right, with those two teams?
You'd think so. I mean, they get the same record. Middleton is an interesting matchup for Chippewa. The two teams never played before, which I guess isn't a surprise given the distance. But Middleton has one of the top passing quarterbacks in the state. He ranks in the top 10, I believe, in both yards and touchdown passes. So it's a team that likes to throw a lot. That's going to be a unique challenge for Chippewa, but it's a Chippewa team that has defended the pass pretty well this year. They had one game against DC Everest where Everest kind of was able to throw on them a little bit, but otherwise, especially coming off last week against Menominee, a good passing team with a good quarterback and they were able to kind of limit them. So that's a very interesting matchup. Once you get to the postseason, you're never quite sure how divisions are going to be split. And this was kind of one where you didn't know if it would be kind of more northern half, so you might get like a Bayport or a Kimberly or whoever in there. It's happened before. I mean, it's just one of those things people try to predict, but you can never truly predict it. But that's an interesting matchup for a 4-5. And I'm going to be very curious to see how that matchup goes. Just because, I mean, you can't really say it's two different style teams because Chippewa can throw too, so it's not like they're just kind of they have to run the ball kind of a thing.
Right.
They just want to if they can.
Right. And then, really for the rest of D1, I know technically Stevens Point and those are kind of in our conference stretch, but you got Hudson as a 2
DC
seed.
Everest, that's an interesting one to me. You've got Hudson, who ended the year pretty strong, most notably picking up a big win over Rice Lake last week. And you got DC Everest, who won the Wisconsin Valley Conference this year. I mean, that's a team that I saw when they played Chippewa Falls, and that is a explosive offense. They've got a really good quarterback, and then Logan George, I mentioned before, you got a tough physical runner, and Blaine Bankston, who has put up a lot of yards this year. So that is not your typical 2-7 matchup, I would say. I mean, I think Everest is, if they're a 7 seed, they're one of the better 7 seeds you're going to find. Let's put it that way. So that's a tough matchup out of the gate for Hudson, but that's a Hudson team that's playing really well right now.
This moving to Division 2, this side of the bracket to me is interesting, Brandon. You got New Richmond as a 1 seed. Big Rivers Conference champs, right? New Richmond over there. Going up against 8-seeded Marshfield. They also have Menominee, who's a 6 seed on here, going up against Monona Grove. And then Rice Lake's the 2 seed in this one, taking on DeForest. I mean, so in this, you've got New Richmond, Rice Lake, and Menominee in there. That potentially could shape out to be some interesting matchups.
Right, yeah. I mean, you've got 3 Big Rivers teams in there. You've got a couple teams from the Mississippi Valley, which, crazy enough, wow, that's the 4-5 matchup with Holman Lacrosse Central, which actually ended up in a 5-way tie for first place.
Wow.
So, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen that before, but 2 of those teams are matching up with Holman and Lacrosse Central. But, that's Big Rivers teams at the top with New Richmond and Rice Lake, and I think that's what pretty much everybody thought, kind of as the regular season wound down. And, New Richmond went unbeaten, won the Big Rivers. They're a deserving 1 seed. I mean, They beat Rice Lake by, I believe, 1 point when they played. So, I mean, if ultimately that is the matchup in Level 3, that would be a heck of a rematch. Menominee coming off a tough loss to Chippewa, but a Menominee team that earlier this year beat Hudson.
Yeah.
We just mentioned the 2 seed in Division 1. A team that, gave some of those other teams trouble. So, Menominee was a little bit banged up last week, but they're Menominee. I mean, they're always going to be kind of this tough, fundamentally sound team, and going down south to play a good Monona Grove team, it would not surprise me to see Menominee put up a good effort in that one.
Moving to Division 3, shout out to the number 1 seed Medford Raiders at the top of the bracket over there. They'll be taking on number 8 Lakeland in Medford tonight. But some of the other teams in there, you got Onalaska as a 2 seed at the bottom of there, and really that's for our immediate area. That's kind of
there's not a lot. Yeah, there's just not a lot there for Division 3 this year. But you mentioned Medford. I mean, they're one of the top rushing teams in the state. That's not a surprise if you follow high school football and you kind of know what Medford's all about. That's their bread and butter, and they do it very well. So
Coach Alberti has just got to be smiling right now. So, yeah. Former coach, Alberti over there. So, Division 4, you got Freedom as the top seed, St. Croix Central, the 8 seed, taking on them. You got Ellsworth as a 6, taking on number 3, Mosinee. Seymour's a 5, taking on number 4, Prescott. Baldwin Woodville's a 2 seed. Kind of falls in that matchup over there too. So again, kind of like Division 3 a little bit.
Not a lot, yeah. Not a lot of local teams from around here. You got some of the teams from the middle border. Another part of that bracket, you got Aquinas, who moved up this year because of the competitive balance rule. They're now in Division 4, but they're a 1 seed, and they've still been very good as well.
Arcadia is a 7 seed on the other side.
Correct.
There, so.
Yep. So you've got some teams from the Mississippi Valley area, not necessarily the Mississippi Valley Conference, but still, yeah, just. I think you're kind of seeing, and you'll see it too here once we get to some other divisions, that sometimes you just have certain areas of the state that are have more teams in certain divisions. It's just that's kind of their strength at a certain size.
Right. Division 5. I always like when we get to Division 5, 6, and 7 here with some of these matchups. You've got number 1 St. Croix Falls taking on the 8-seeded Elk Mound. Barron taking on Wittenberg Bermanwood in a 5-4 matchup. Stanley Boyd, which you're going to be at tonight, is a 3 seed taking on number 6 Spooner. Got Colby as a 7 seed taking on Northwestern in that bracket.
This was an interesting bracket because I think I remember the seeding is done electronically, so there's no more seeding meetings. It's been that way for a few years. In the old not the old days, but not so long ago. You used to know kind of who the 8 teams were in your grouping, and then they would get together like Saturday morning and they would seed it. The coaches would just kind of go through, and there were positive, and like anything, there were positive and negatives to it. But in this one, I think Stanley Boyd, they're a 3 seed, but they could have this is one of those where maybe you could make a case for them being a 2 seed. Because with them being 8-1 and their one loss being a very competitive loss to Regis versus Northwestern, who has 2 losses, but that's how the seedings work sometimes. Now when you do it electronically, I mean there's the numbers say what the numbers say, and regardless of where you are as a team, it's kind of your job just to go out there and you win.
Right.
But Stanley Boyd taking on Spooner, and that is a very Heart North heavy region. There's 4 of the 8 teams are from the Heart North, including the top 2 seeds you mentioned. Barron, who's had a really good year, the best year they've had in a while, and then Spooner, a 6 seed, who's a tough physical team. So it's going to be a test. And talking with Coach Jeff Koenig earlier this week, he mentioned when you play a team like Spooner, it's like trying to win a fight in a phone booth.
I love those analogies.
and that's they've seen teams like that. It's kind of like that with Regis or Mondovi, but at the same time, everyone's always kind of got their own little twist on it. So it's it's going to be, I don't want to say necessarily a styles clash, but you got a Stanley Boyd team that, is up tempo and they're trying to maximize plays, and you got a team like Spooner who's looking to run the ball and control the clock.
On the other side, though, too, I was just kind of you got Stratford still over there too as a 1 seed.
Right, they're up in they're up in division this year. Competitive balance rule as well. Multi-time state champions in D6. They've bumped up to D5 this year, so. They're in the same section as Fond du Lac St. Mary Springs, another team that's you've seen a lot of times in Division 6, but they've bumped up as well.
To Division 6, another interesting some interesting matchups here. We got Regis as 1 taking on 8-seeded Fall Creek, 2 teams that are a little familiar with each other. That's going to be at Carson Park tonight. You got Lady Smith as a 5 seed taking on number 4 Luther. Mondovi as a 3 seed taking on Cameron. Chautauqua Weyerhaeuser is a 7 seed taking on Grantsburg. If you move a little bit further down on that side, you got Nakusa taking on Abbotsford in a 5-4 matchup. And then Bondwell against the Fighting Crandons over there as a 7 seed. So, but that top part of that bracket over here too, I mean, potential of some interesting matchups with this one.
Right, and you're always kind of wondering, and in my experience, coaches aren't always fond of when you see a team like a conference foe that you've already seen, because that's always going to give the advantage to the team that lost the first one, or maybe the team that was the lower seed. But this is one where Regis, you mentioned earlier when we were talking with Dr. Crow, coming off that big win. I think that was a good game for them to have right before the playoffs. A team that really tested them, forced them to play 48 minutes right before the postseason. Like that's valuable.
Yeah.
As long as you get out there, without any injuries or anything like that, like that's very valuable. It's sometimes it can, if you go into the postseason with a couple lopsided wins, it can tend to take you a little bit to get going. But you mentioned Fall Creek. I mean, the reason they clinched getting in was because they beat Mondovi on the last Friday.
Right. Big win for them.
That's a big win for them.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't necessarily rewarded with it in the ranking in the seedings, but that's a big win for that group. I mean, being able to get that right before the postseason. Mondovi's still a 3. You mentioned with Cameron. Grantsburg won the Lakeland Conference. That's a Lakeland rematch. Chautauqua Weyerhaeuser their first year in the Lakeland. One of a couple teams moving into that conference, and they had a solid. They've had a solid season so far as well. But there are some interesting matchups potentially. Some games that we've kind of seen before over the years in the postseason. With Regis matched up with Grantsburg before. They've matched up with Mondovi. Obviously in the regular season, which was a competitive game. So.
Division 7, then we've got Spring Valley as a 1 seed taking on Whitehall. Glenwood City's coming in as a 5 seed. They'll be taking on number 4 Blair Taylor. Pepin Alma taking on number 6 Aliva Strum. Turtle Lake as a 7 seed taking on Boyceville. Boyceville as a 2 seed over there too. So that should be a fun team to watch in this postseason.
I think so. And those top 2 teams, Spring Valley and Boyceville, those are the top 2 teams from the Dunn St. Croix. They met, had an excellent game in the regular season. Spring Valley won on the way to the conference championship. That's a big reason they're the 1 seed there. But if that Boyceville program has really reemerged the last couple years. Making the deep run last year, losing to Edgar, but you just once you get into D7 here, I mean, Spring Valley's a team that's always there. They're always solid. You look at Blair Taylor, Pepin Alma, those are some teams. Aliva Strum, those are some teams that have had some good years in the Dairyland. I mean, that's essentially this bracket is kind of the Dairyland versus the Dunn St. Croix. When you look at it, I mean, you've got some crossover matchups in there with Glenwood City and Blair Taylor, Whitehall, Spring Valley. The other 2 are kind of rematches from the conference season. Otherwise, Edgar as the 1 seed on the bottom part of that there with, I mean, we talk about Stratford. I mean, Edgar and Stratford are kind of, sometimes they're pretty good at basketball too, but football royalty when it comes to, this time of year.
That and wrestling for them, yeah.
Yes. So, yes, it is that. I mean, it's that time. And
Well, then we got 8-man football, or 8-player football coming up here too. And I know it's a little bit of a smaller bracket, but Owen Withey as a 1 seed is going to be taking on Port Edwards. You got Newman Catholic taking on McDonald Central Catholic.
Good old CWCC matchup for those of you that were around for the WISA days.
Yep. So that's a 3-2. On the other side, you've got Clayton taking on Siren. You got Northwood, Solon Springs as a 1 seed, taking on Hurley as well. So some of these games, some of the teams in it, affected by results from the final game over there too. One of them initially was Gilman was in, but
there was a mistake,
and then Clayton gets in.
There was a mistake in how they had added up one of the tiebreakers, which put Clayton in over Gilman. It's interesting because the 11-man play, or the 11-player playoffs, you have at this point, I mean, you look at the records for a lot of teams, and it's just the influx of 8-man has fundamentally changed, the 11-player playoffs, where you've got a lot of teams now that are getting in kind of below the threshold what is initially like. Used to be like you need to have a 4-3 record in conference, and you would get a couple teams in, but now you've essentially got a division's worth of teams that have made it that were kind of below that bar. And because, I mean, you got to fill it out. You're going to have 7 divisions. You're going to have 224 teams. It's just a matter of how do you get there. Right now, in A-player, you're kind of in a spot where they're kind of in between, where you can't really, I don't know if you can fully expand the playoffs yet, because it's growing, but yet otherwise you're still in that same spot. But you can't, because there's 16 teams. You can't really go up to 24 because you can't really give a football team a bye week at the end of October. I don't think you're going to find any coach that wants that.
I'm glad you're bringing this up because I wanted to ask you. It almost reminds me of the college football playoff with 8-man football.
Yeah, you can't really do that. I'm sure Owen Withey wouldn't want to have a week off from playing right now. I mean, at this point, you just want to go.
Right.
So you can't really because ideally it would be nice to maybe expand it to 24 because there are, I mean, a team like a Gilman, a New Auburn, teams that had really good years that I think were playoff worthy, but it's a numbers game where I think you've got teams. I think every team that made it had 6 wins or more. So you basically had to be like 6-2 or better. And even so, like New Auburn was 6-2, and they didn't make it. It's just it's tough because those are teams I think that are worthy of the opportunity. It's just a matter of you're kind of just stuck in the middle,
right?
Because you can't really go up to 32 because then you're in the same boat.
You essentially need more schools to be an 8-man football.
Yes, and it's growing. So
yep.
I think they're going to get there. They're just not there yet.
Right.
But looking at these brackets, obviously, I mean, honestly, the big thing I was looking for when they were announced would Onwithie and McDonald be in the same region, and they are. Last year, McDonald was not. They were actually in that northern bracket, and then ended up making it through, and then losing to Thorpe to go in the game to go state. So, but both those teams, I mean, they're facing teams that were a part of a shared conference championship with Port Edwards and Wausau Newman. Wausau Newman's had a great history of 8-man success, won back-to-back titles a few years ago. They're doing it a little bit different this year, but still they've been successful. So, if both Onwithie and McDonald are able to win, I mean, that's regardless of 8-player, 11-player, whatever, that's one of the most high-profile games to me of next week, if that's the case. And if it is, we'll talk about it next week. But
right,
both,
so I got a feeling you might be at that one.
I think so. But Onwithie coming off a tight win over Gilman, and it's interesting because Gilman and Clayton both lost to the same teams. They both lost to Onwithie. They both lost to McDonald. The margin of victory between the two for Gilman was actually less than the combined margin or the margin of defeat than it was for Clayton, but that wasn't the tiebreaker.
What was the tiebreaker? Do you remember?
I believe it was like combined win-loss record for conference foes or something like that. Like,
okay.
and Clayton was better.
Okay.
So and that was just where they just miscalculated or just didn't whatever the rule was. So that's the rule there. So, but yeah, and remember the 8-player tournament is a week shorter. So that state championship game will be November 16th in Wisconsin Rapids.
Yeah. Richie texted if Chi High takes down Middleton and Wanakee wins, is Berg going to come see me in Wanakee for round 2? So, got to throw that one in there.
I guess. I mean, I've got connections down there, so I mean that's there's been years where they've went. Chippewa Falls has went east. They've played Kimberly. They've played Pulaski, and some. It's just and there's been years in the past too, even before I got here, they went down south. That's just. It's just one of those things. You get more travel in Division I just because there's fewer teams close to home.
Right. Yep. Exactly. I know there's other stuff too. We got volleyball regionals, semifinals too. Was it the Chi High? Was it Chi High New Richmond?
I was at Chi High New Richmond. New Richmond won. They advanced. They'll take on Hudson. But obviously, right here immediately in the greater Altoona Eau Claire area, big week. Big Saturday for Eau Claire volleyball. They got 4 teams in action, all 4 of them. Guaranteed a regional champion with Memorial hosting North, which I have to imagine that's going to be rather rocking. But
packed gym.
You've got Eau Claire Regis in Division 4 going for a regional championship. They swept Thorpe last night. They'll take on Plumston Elmwood. D5, you've got Eau Claire Manual, who's a top seed and I believe top-ranked team in Division 5. They've had an outstanding year. They'll take on Siren. So that'll be going on tomorrow night. I will be at McDonald. McDonald in Division 3, they won. They will be taking on Unity in a region that top half of that Division 3 bracket is all state-ranked teams. I mean, that's a tough one. Whoever comes out of there, you've got Barron and Grantsburg in the other one. Whoever comes out of there is going to be well tested. But on the other end, you've got Stratford taking on Durand, Arkansas. You got Fall Creek, who's going to be hosting Prescott. Prescott's been a bit of a disruptor this postseason, winning 2 games on the road, beating Elk Mound, and then Tuesday going on the road, making the long trip for them to Marathon and beating the Red Raiders. So, Division 2 as well. I mean, the top seed up top, Osceola, you got some in Altoona will be hitting the road to take on St. Croix Central. You've got some real middle border kind of influence there. But it's, it comes so quick this time of year.
Yeah.
I mean, next week we'll be talking, and it'll be the landscape and football and everything will be a lot different. You get cross country sectionals. Today you've got.
I was going to ask you about cross country.
Division 2 up in Rice Lake. Tomorrow you've got Division 1 Menominee, Division 3 at Cadott.
Great piece, by the way, by Brandon on cross country. Check it out at chippewa.com. Got some contenders. Obviously, Bloomer is a team.
Yes.
To watch.
They'll be
over
run
there,
today in
so.
Rice Lake. Bloomer girls finished runner-up last year at state. They recently got one of their runners back, Sophie Strand, returning from an injury, and she's jumped right in and just kind of added to what was already a darn good team. So they're looking to get back to state and maybe move up a little bit on the podium. We'll see. They got to take care of business today to have that opportunity next week in Wisconsin Rapids. So
at the
soccer,
good old golf course
at the Ridges. I would like to golf there once, but I've always just been there for cross country. It looks
I've
like
golfed it. It is a nice course. Yep, definitely.
Soccer around here, Eau Claire Memorial. They'll go for a regional title tomorrow. They host Wisconsin Rapids.
That'll be another good one there too.
And another half there. You got Hudson taking out Wausau West. So those two, those two teams are always there.
Yeah.
Memorial and Hudson, just two outstanding programs. Eau Claire Memorial picked up an 8-0 shutout victory over Chippewa on Tuesday. So they're looking to make yet another deep push.
Yep.
And they got the talent to do it.
Man, a lot of things going on. Plus, tomorrow we've got Blue Gold
The
football.
War on 94.
Blue Gold football taking on Stout. Be a good matchup. I think Stout has surprised a lot of people this year.
They picked up some big wins, but
really close loss to River Falls. So
and Eau Claire looking to bounce back off the tough loss to La Crosse. But they picked up some wins this year too. So that's a fun one. I was actually talking to some people about that last night.
Nice.
That are going to be going. So they're excited. That's you want the trophy. Whenever you have the opportunity to play a team that's a rival and win a trophy, I don't know. I always just feel like trophies add to it.
Exactly. Yep.
It's one thing to say we beat you. It's another thing to hold up something.
Yep.
Be like, no, this says we beat you.
Yep.
That's going to be a good one tomorrow.
Especially when it's like the college football ones with the
I always appreciate, and there's even some good ones around here in high school.
Yep.
And
what's the milk can one?
The milk can for Thorpe and Owen Withy. You've got the Burst Tree Axe for New Auburn and Lake Holcomb. There's
some good ones.
There's some good runs around.
The most creative, the better too. So
I forget the name of I think is it Monroe, but there's down south. There's a school from Wisconsin and a school from Illinois that play, and I thought it was Monroe because that was the Cheesemakers, and they play a team from Illinois that's the Pretzels, and it's called the Snack Bowl.
That's awesome
Because you got the pretzels and the cheese.
That's awesome. I like that one.